So it's lesson 6, part 2. We've got our artists, the ability to view them in card view. Adam, I think you said you had a solution. Did you want to share? What are we missing? I was still playing around with it, but I hadn't fixed it yet. But you are probably smarter than me, so how'd you do it?
So I took a look at the Bootstrap page for the nav bar, and when I looked at the collapsible section, it looked like a number of parameters in the button class, in the button section were missing. So on line 5, I replaced it and just changed the ID. I can copy and paste it into the chat, and it works perfectly.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Got it. So this is what this is. So this is where I've got on line 23 then, correct? The button class for navbar toggler.
Yeah, so just the opening tag, replace it with that, and it'll work.
Got it. Okay, so we're going to replace line 23. Got it. So I was missing some attributes here. All right, that's great. Thanks, Adam. We'll give that a try. Awesome. Thank you very much. Always happy to have such bright students. Well done. Okay, so what I want to do here is add edit and delete buttons into each card, and then we'll add those views and, well, we'll need a view for edit. We won't necessarily need one for delete. So we'll go back into our cards in our index. So under our H5, I'm going to add a link that goes to artists/edit. And then we're going to append on the ID. And I'll make this blue, white text. And it will say edit. We'll see how this looks. This should give us a blue button underneath the artist name. And that button will link to artists edit with an ID parameter. Try that. So now we click on edit, passes in the object ID. We get a not found. That's fine. And then we're also going to want a delete button here. This is going to go to artist/delete with this _ID as our parameter. And these buttons will use the Bootstrap danger class. So we've got a red button and a blue button. Each one will pass in the unique identifier, but it's going to go to a different place, different route. So the edit button will call the edit URL. The delete button will call the delete URL. So you get this for each one. We should also use a little bit of JavaScript. We don't actually need a delete page. We could just pop up. We did this. We would have done this if you were in my PHP section. We click delete. It'll just pop open a little JavaScript confirmation. We can click OK or cancel. If we click OK, we're just going to delete it and refresh the page. So we're going to add a click handler here. On click equals return confirm delete. So we're going to call a JavaScript function, which we're going to have to add. So we don't just want to delete. Sometimes people click the wrong things. They're on a mobile device. They've got stubby thumbs like me. Really easy. This is known with the highly technical term of fat finger issues. Sometimes we tap or click the wrong thing. So we should never delete something without giving the user a confirmation. So we can then go and add, and we'll make this function global. I don't want to write it in this page because we might want to confirm delete for other things in the project as well. So where should we put this? Inside our public folder, notice we already have a folder here for client-side JavaScript. Now that folder is empty, but we can create our own scripts file and then link it into the project. So I'm going to expand my public folder, and inside of JavaScript, I'm going to make a new JavaScript file. I'll just call it scripts. So these are not node files. This is just plain old JavaScript, client-side JavaScript. So in here, we'll create a function called confirm delete. And it will return a true false by using the JavaScript confirm function. So this is built into JavaScript. We'll say, are you sure you want to delete this? So the confirm method, it works kind of like an alert box, except an alert box, gives us a little modal window with the message, but there's just an OK button to dismiss an alert. We can't do anything else besides close it. The confirm is like an alert, but it displays an OK and a cancel button. And as my WebStorm code hint shows, if the user clicks OK, the method returns true. If they click cancel, it returns false. So we want to return the user's choice. Did they click OK or did they click cancel? So we also now need to include this script in our layout. This is a brand new script file. But right now it's not, our web page can't actually reach it. It can't find this file. We'll need to include this script in our layout so it will be available globally in our app. So give me another minute if you need to refer to this function. Our next step is to open our layout file and add a script tag that points to or references this new JavaScript file. That way, when we click the delete button, rather than just automatically go to our delete method, we're going to interrupt that operation with the JavaScript confirmation. Here go my layout. And I should make a comment here that this was a Google font. So this is our custom client-side JavaScript. So we're going to find this in JavaScript, scripts.js. We don't need the public path here. All the public client-side assets are already in the public path. So it's okay that WebStorm's saying it can't find that. At runtime, I know this path will be correct, just like our style sheet is correct. And that public path is defined in our app.js. The express generator does it right here. It says the path for static assets is public. So we don't need to include public when we're linking to any resources here, our images, JavaScript style sheets. So now when I refresh and I click a delete button, I get my little JavaScript confirmation. Are you sure you want to delete it? If I cancel, nothing happens. If I click OK, it now tries to call the delete method that doesn't exist yet. So we can actually, let's do our delete method first, because it's a little bit simpler. And then we can do our edit, because we're going to need a form with a get and a post in order to do any editing. So we've added our delete button. It's going to call artist/delete. It's going to pass in the document ID as a parameter. But before it does that, we're going to interrupt it with our little JavaScript confirmation. So in order to complete the delete functionality, we now need to go back to our controller and we need to handle a GET request at /artist/delete with an underscore ID parameter. So we will go back to our controller and do that. So we've now got three methods here. We've got a get at the index, a get at create, and a post at create. Now we're going to handle a get request at /artist/delete ABC123. Delete artist with the ID parameter. So our URL will be /delete and then a slash. And then to represent this parameter, I'm going to put on a colon underscore ID. So this colon means the next part of this URL is a parameter. It's not a literal. And then our usual request response callback. And we're going to use Mongoose to remove the selected document. So let ID equals request.params.underscore ID. So whatever we're naming the parameter here, it's in our parameter list. To get document ID from URL parameter. So I can put that comment up above. And now use Mongoose to delete the document and redirect. So once we're done deleting, just like we redirected after creating, we're going to delete, and this page is just going to reload, basically. And that artist should be removed. So here we called the create method of our Mongoose model. This time we're going to call artist.remove. We've got to supply a parameter here. So our ID parameter, underscore ID, is also equal to our, I'm sorry, I missed an underscore. So all four of these, I'm going to call it underscore ID, because that's the name of the unique identifier that MongoDB generates, underscore ID. So we're going to call remove, and we're going to evaluate, did this work? Did we get back an error. If we did, we'll handle it the same way we've been doing it all along. Log it out, print the error to the browser. Our else statement is going to be exactly the same as in our create. If no error happened when we call remove, redirect back to the root URL /artists. So we don't actually need a physical page for doing the delete. Our delete button just calls this method, which works with Mongoose to remove that document from the database, and then we're redirecting back to the lists of artists. So this is like an invisible, not even an invisible page, there is no page. It's code only. Process some code on the server, send in a request, and then do a redirect response. So there's no need for an actual view for doing delete. Let's give this a try. See if we have to make any adjustments. I'll go add a new artist to be deleted. Save. I'll click delete. If I click cancel, my artist is still here. If I click OK, we can see the browser flicker, so we know the page reloads, but the data's gone. Try one more time. Save. And now I can delete. So performing a delete is fairly simple. We did have to add the JavaScript confirmation to make sure we don't delete, the users don't delete the wrong things. And the only other thing is new here is we haven't used a URL parameter before. So this colon, that's our delimiter to say the value that comes after is a parameter. So when we're reading data in our request, if we've got a form, we're going to use request.body. And if we're using values in the URL, we're going to use request.params instead. So those two objects, request body, request.params, they let us receive data along with our HTTP requests. We're using the Mongoose remove method. Now we've left the update for last because the update is the most complex. Not that it's super complex, but it's a little more involved than the create, the read, and the delete, because it's a two-step process. First, we've got to read the artist and display it, and then we have to process and update. So we're going to need another view for this. Everybody with me? Does anybody still need to see the delete code or need to talk about any questions about the delete process before I move forward? Okay. If it's not working, we may have time mover where I can help you look at it a little bit later. You're probably just missing something small, which we can look at. So the process we'll need to follow now with edit, we want to be able to click. So we're going to need to write a get handler. Okay, Booger, I'll leave the code up for another minute here. Have a look carefully at your code. Yeah, okay. Sure. So we'll need the edit method in the controller, number one. Number two, we'll need an edit view that we can render, we can display a form, but the form should already be populated with the artist name. And then we'll need a edit post method, so when we user clicks save, we can modify the name. So let's write our get method, which is pretty simple for editing first. So we'll do get slash artist slash edit, and again, ABC 1, 2, 3. So show pre-populated edit form. So our URL will be slash edit slash, and just like in the delete, we're going to have our URL parameter. So we know which document are we editing. And our callback request and response. So the code in here, it's almost a combination of the code we did in our root path, where we're finding all the artists, and then here where we're rendering a form. We kind of have to do both. We have to render a page that includes a form, but we also need to pass it some query data because we don't want the edit form to be blank. We want it to be pre-populated. So we will read the ID from the URL param. Again, we'll say let underscore ID equals request.params dot underscore ID. So the same line we've got in delete. Read the URL, read the ID from the URL, stick it in a variable. Now we want to query the DB for the selected artist document. So before we called find, when we called find on our other method, it returned all of the documents. So which one of these do you think we should call instead? I don't want to call the find method at the top. I want to call one of these other versions. Yeah, exactly, Adam. Let's call find by ID. So here we just pass in our underscore ID value. And then we get back either an error or an artist with our callback. So this is new. This find by ID is new, but it's pretty self-explanatory. Find a single document using the unique identifier. If we have an error, same process as before. Let's log it to the console and print to the browser. Otherwise, we want to not only load a view, we'll want to set a title on the view, and we'll want to pass it the artist document. So this is the document that comes out of our query. So we'll call res.render artist slash edit, which we'll make in a minute. We'll set a title. Maybe it'll just say artist details. And we'll set an artist parameter where we're passing our query result back. So we will load the edit view, pass the selected artist doc to it for display. So this method's going to get called when the user clicks one of those kind of teal or turquoise edit buttons. So now we get failed to look up view, which is expected. The method's now being called, our ID is being passed. But we're going to need to build that view. It will be very similar to our create view, but we also have to add a little bit of code to populate the name text box. So that's going to be your next step. Inside of views and artists, you can go ahead and create a new file called edit.hps. So I've got create an index. I'm going to make a new file called edit.hps. Rather than retyping, if I go to my create file, we can actually just copy the HTML that's here. We'll need to make a couple small changes, but I'm basically just going to copy what's there and paste it in. Here, I'm just going to change this heading. I'll just change it to say artist details. So now we can click and our form is loading, which is good, but it's empty, which is not good. When I click on something, we also want the name to display here. Now we are passing the artist data to the view. So what should we add? We need to add something here on line 5. What would we add to display the artist name? Okay, yeah, let's try that. Let's try that. So we want to set the value that actually prints the text. So Chris, the placeholder would just be like a hint, and as soon as the user typed in there, it would disappear. So instead, we want value, and then we'll use our handlebars syntax to display the name property of our artist. So this is fairly simple. We've only got one input here. It's not a big, long form. So you're going to add that artist.name in double quotes. And now when I refresh, so whatever artist I pick, add Adam, good question. We could put it in a hidden field. We actually won't need to. And here's why. I'll explain. If we look at the form, if we don't specify an action, the form will actually post to itself. So if our URL is artist/edit, when I submit the form, it's going to make a post request at artist/edit. And we don't have that method yet, but we're going to do it and we're going to make it. We will be able to use the ID from the URL. So it wouldn't be wrong to also put the ID in a hidden field, but we don't need to because we still have access to it. Right? When I save here, notice it's posting to the same URL. So we've still got the ID. So it's certainly not wrong to put it in the form, but it's not necessary. So there's a few ways we can do this. Let's go to, so now we're going to write the post method. But artist/edit/abc123. We want to update existing artist doc with values from form submission. So again, we're using router.post. When there's a post request, /artists/edit, And then we've got our colon with our ID parameter. Our usual callback. If you're getting annoyed of me saying our usual callback of request and response, awesome. That means that you're now internalizing that this is the way all of our node pages work. HTTP request, HTTP response. So let's say let, again, underscore ID equal our request dot params dot ID. Get document ID from URL parameter. Now there's a few ways we can do this. Mongoose does have, we did notice there was a find one and update method. I haven't actually used that method before, but we should be able to use it. So I'm going to maybe pull up the Mongoose docs and we can try to use it. Let's try find one and update. Let's check the syntax. If this doesn't work, I've got another way we can do it. Okay, yes, we've already got Mongoose, so let's see their example. So they call find one and update. So the first parameter is our condition. And then our second parameter is what value do we want to update? Okay, we'll try it. So we'll call artist dot find one and update. So our first parameter is the ID. We want to find the document with our ID. The second parameter is what are we updating? We are updating the name to be our request.body.name. So update the document with this ID. So this is like our where clause if we're writing this in SQL. And this is the set name equal to the name text box from our form. And then we've got a null, which I'm not sure what that will do. And then our callback function. Okay. Let's see. Find one and update. State it this way. We'll try it. Give a null. And then we've got an error or an artist document. So if we have an error, usual stuff, log and display. Otherwise, we'll redirect again. So we'll go back to the list of artists. We'll try this. ID, update to save changes to existing doc. We'll give this a try. There's some other ways we can process the update. We could do a find first and then an update operation second. Probably more efficient to do it this way with only one call to MongoDB, but I'm not entirely sure it will work. So let's try this. Whoops. Yes, you're right. It would probably help, Adam. That's a really good point. Thank you. Okay, ID, update, and callback. Yeah, we don't even need, I think that null parameter could come out. and the ID. Okay, sorry, I'll simplify it a bit. Thank you for catching my mistake, Chris. So I think here we just need ID. It doesn't have to be a JSON object. I don't think we need this null parameter. So the ID we're updating, the JSON object with the fields, and then our callback. Maybe we need the null. We'll try it and see. We may have to adjust it a little bit. I'm going to try it like this. We'll see what happens. So I'm going to go to edit. So I should have a hyphen in the name here. Okay, that did not quite work, did it? So maybe I need the null. And yeah, I may have to put the JSON object back. A little bit of syntax experiment. Thanks, Jason. I'm going to try it again. Okay. That's good. Sometimes, finding stuff that doesn't work helps us make us clear to us exactly what we need to do. I'm going to put it back the way I had it, where the ID is in a JSON object. We've got the null options. I will try one more time. Okay, so I got an error. What did I do wrong? Cast to object ID failed. So this is, oh, it failed because, again, I missed my underscore. I called the parameter underscore ID, but then I tried reading it without my underscore. So I missed this underscore here on line 91 where I've got request.params. I'll fix that up and try it again. Okay, so that does work. My apologies, I missed my underscore. Got find by ID and update. So a JSON object with our passing in our ID, then the field where the properties we're updating, our null options, and then our callback. So now we've got kind of a fully working little CRUD application. I can add, read, update, and delete. So we made some useful progress. It's 12:40. I'm going to put everything up on GitHub. Okay, so everything is up on Git for you to reference. Start again. Are there any questions about anything that we've done? Largely done what I wanted to accomplish today. I know there may be some people who need a bit of help, but does anybody have questions or anything you want to talk about or ask about in terms of the coding that we've done in our application today? So what we will do, I think we will wrap up a little early today. I know I've asked you to do a lot of work in getting your portfolios done. So maybe I think shorter class today is probably in order. I know it's getting to be a busy time of the semester, so I will let you go for today. I will encourage you to respond in the post in the gallery and give some feedback to your classmates. If you're one of the almost 40% of the class that has not submitted your portfolio, please make sure you do so as soon as you possibly can so that you earn some marks for your portfolio. And be in class. Everybody should be in class. There should be 37 people, including me, in the WebEx room next week for our midterm exam. Okay, so all the code we've done today has already been uploaded to GitHub. If you, Booger, I'm happy to stick around and help you debug your problem. When we come back, so next week we're gonna have our midterm exam, and just looking at what's ahead for us. So midterm next week, reading week the week after, and then we're going to look at authentication. So how do we start to secure this stuff and control access? So for example, only an authenticated user can add, edit, or delete. And an anonymous user would not see these options or have access to these methods and views. So we're going to start looking at that. And then we'll take a couple weeks to do that. We'll look at social authentication as well. And then starting in week 10, we'll look at rebuilding this as a single page application using an Angular front end, replacing our HBS templating. Okay, so that's kind of a look ahead as to where we're going. So I will upload the videos later today. I'm going to stop my recording, and if you need some help with this application, then I will try my best to help you. Okay, if you're all caught up, then have a great week, and I'll get your portfolios marked before the exam next week.